Welcome to another Core Podcast Update. Today is September 18th, 2020, and I'm filling in for Adrian Terry. This is Adrian's busy time of year with his law practice, so I'll be moderating today. And we have our guest, Karen Kiser, who is one of Core members, volunteers, supporters, and Karen, like so many others, put in a lot of hard work during the special election. So we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody who has helped in this effort. It takes all of us. And CORE really is citizens for an open and responsible Edgewood. And that the citizenry is what dictates what we do, how we do it, and when we do it. So we've had meetings at Legacy Church to get that kind of feedback. We get feedback all the time. And of course, you can always email us at our Edgewood Core NM Gmail account, which will be on the bottom of the screen. That's not it exactly, but you'll see the link on the bottom of the screen. So Karen, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
So we want to update the public on a couple of items. To September 9th meeting, do you know what happened?
Well, I think that's when we began the change to commission manager government, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. The governing body certified the results of the election to the town clerk. It was a landslide, 70% about to 30%, which I think is significant in this respect. It means that there's a mandate for change in this town. And it was expressed through the overwhelming turnout, broke all the records. I was trying to think today, I was trying to remember, when was the last election that we had that was such a landslide? It was some presidential election, I think, 30 years ago.
I know never in Edgewood's 20-year history have that many people voted, and I found that the most exciting part of the whole special election.
Yeah.
Over 1,500 people cared enough about the matter to vote, and that's unheard of. We'd get a real low turnout, good turnout in general elections, presidential elections, but a really low turnout usually in our municipal issues. So this touched a chord with 1,505 people at least.
Yeah, very, very well said. So the other thing we wanted to talk about a little bit is this is, of course, a major milestone. We're not to our goal yet of open, responsible, and ethical government, but this is a huge step forward, and it gives us a great toolbox of new tools, new rights that the citizens now have to have a voice in their government, and just the election was a huge expression of that voice. So I'm really excited and looking forward to this transformation of government into the open and ethical system that people say they want.
Well, if only it flows that way.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's how it goes.
Yeah.
But the first meeting left me a little uneasy that perhaps the mayor and the councilors, Holly and Abrams, that side with him are not embracing the change.
Yeah.
I don't think Councilor Holly even, maybe she made a brief mention of it, but I thought it would be one thing they could all five agree on, that, the people have spoken, let's do what the people want. But I have a suspicion that the fight's not over.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I can agree with that. I think it actually brings up a good point, which is that the people who voted want a more open and ethical form of government. Those that were against it, at least from the political insiders and the people, the mayors, councilors, Holly and Abrams, don't want a greater voice from the people. In fact, Abrams at one point was offended and upset that people had spoken out to him at these meetings and expressed their displeasure with the way he's been voting. So they seem to want to suppress people's input. We want more input, and the people of Edgewood have spoken, and they want more input.
I even heard Councilor Abrams say, I want to know what the people that didn't vote have to say. And I thought, what kind of world is that? I mean,
Yeah, it's pretty
1,505 people voted. Let's start by listening to them.
Yeah.
I just sense a resistance, and it surprises me. I understood it before the election, but after 70% of those who voted in a record turnout said, we're ready for change. Let's try commission manager. Maybe it'll work better. I just thought it would get everyone on the same page, and I hope that's what ultimately happens.
And I kind of thought it would be like it was before, where I've told people it's like driving a nail. It doesn't drive itself, and you have to hit it squarely on the head each time to make it go in, right? So with great resistance, we have proceeded forward on the goals that were expressed by the people at our legacy meetings and in emails and in lots of feedback, that this is what they want, and we're absolutely committed to those ultimate goals. This is a great mid-step. It's a huge step forward, and we need to continue on that path. So we are watching to see what the council is going to do, if they're going to respect the will of the people and really make this substantive transition to a more open, ethical form of government in commission manager. If they don't, then we'll be taking more steps, as we have in the past, in keeping with our commitment to ourselves and the people for an open and ethical government.
Well, they have a lot of examples to follow. I took the time, and I think you had done this, you gave me the good idea. I spoke to the town clerk of Aztec and Truth or Consequences, and I'm not sure if I called Tucumcari, I don't think I reached anyone. Also Raton. So there's 4 towns right in our state under that 10,000 population cutoff that effectively use commission manager. It works well, and although all but Truth or Consequences have formed districts, which they began talking about, our governing body talked about that last meeting, they don't vote by district because their population is too small. They're ready for it once they go over 10,000, but that seems to be a point of argument in our town, and I don't understand why we can't just do what the other towns do.
Well, it's a good point that there was a lot of disinformation thrown out by the political appointees of the mayor, and mayor came out squarely against commission manager. So they threw out this misinformation that you're going to lose your right to vote for all of the commissioner seats on the governing body. You could only vote for one in your district. That's for towns over 10,000. Edgewood is about 6,000. So you contacted some of the cities that are about our size that run on commission manager. They all informed you that's how they do it. I actually got an email response, a great one from the city of Raton, and I just want to read an excerpt from it. I told them I understand they vote at large, and they said, you are correct. Just to give you some additional information, the city of Raton is a commission manager form of government. The city ordinance defines 5 districts, but because our population is below 10,000, a city commission candidate can run for office without residing in the district in which they're running, and citizens can vote at large for any and all commissioner positions, regardless of which district the voter resides. So that says it all. And I think it's interesting that the opposition, the mayor's political appointees, have been pounding this issue and blasting it out on social media, putting it out everywhere. Either they don't know what they're talking about, which I find hard to believe. They could pick up a phone and call Aztec. They could pick up a phone and call Raton. So it tells me that this is some kind of disingenuous effort to disempower people and say, you don't have the power you think you had. In fact, you lost. This kind of feels like sour grapes about them losing the election.
I agree. And it did not stop after the election. And some of the people that take to social media, shame on them, because they are appointees to the Planning and Zoning Board. I wore that hat where I used to live for more than a decade, and with it comes a little responsibility that people turn to you for information about the town, and I felt an obligation to only put forth true information. And shame on Planning and Zoning Board members that would purposefully spread false information, because I think the law sets the 10,000 population mark on purpose. I don't know how the districts will lay out in Edgewood, but I think it's something you have to grow into to be voting from district.
Right.
Ultimately, I see that as a good thing, so that every little corner of Edgewood feels represented and heard. But we're not there yet. We're 6,000, not 10,000. Maybe we'll find we're bigger than that after the census results come in. But The same way you have to be over a certain size to even ask to become a commission manager. How do you know how many that is?
3,000. You have to be
So
over 3,000.
it's not for the town of 500.
Right.
We had to grow to be big enough to even take this next step. I just hope that the naysayers won't try to force Edgewood into something unique, like voting by district before we're big enough to do that. The law sets the threshold because that's when it works.
And don't you think, given our goals of an open government, don't you think the people ought to really make that decision? They ought to.
I sure do. I wish we could have this is a time when, if not for the COVID-19 limitations, it would be so nice to have some big town meetings so that all the people that voted, that got involved in the special election, could show up and be heard. And I think that would help Mayor Bassett and councillors Holly and Abraham maybe behave a little differently in this transition.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when we can have those meetings.
Oh,
The
I can't
meetings
wait.
at Legacy were so informative. People they were actually open meetings, unlike the town meetings where people are limited to a couple of minutes. There's no feedback from the town governing body. It's very stilted and very artificial, whereas ours were open discussions. So something else I wanted to mention is that the mayor had said at one point that it was going to cost an enormous amount of money for these special elections. Well, we checked with the clerk, and really the basic printing costs and postage costs were about $8,000. But the mayor, it appears, has run the bill up, maybe to make himself right about, and that he was saying that they were going to be $50,000. I think it has cost that, but only because of the way they went about it, much like everything else that's done in this town, in a very wasteful and inefficient way.
I read that in the newspaper today, and I think it was in a letter to the editor from former Councillor Ring, and he said, "Core cost the town $50,000," and I thought, no, the mayor fighting the inevitable, fighting the law when he should be able to read it and understand it.
Right, and
fighting every step.
I have two thoughts on that. Is if the mayor had been running an open and ethical government, this would have never had to happen, right? And also, it's far less than the couple of $1 million that they've wasted in just the last couple of years, right? So I think it's
by
cheap.
comparison, $50,000's cheap.
How much is an open and ethical democracy in our town worth? So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because that's another bit of disinformation that's been going around. The other thing is I want the people to know that EPCOR is still marching ahead. The town is still trying to get the takeover of our water system to happen, which could be one of the most devastating things, saddling the town with up to $28 million in debt. They've already spent close to $150,000 in legal fees now, just exploring the idea, they say, of taking over the water system. Everywhere else that's happened, it has doubled and tripled the rates. I talked to a gentleman with one of our supporters that has horses. He pays about $125 a month now because he has several horses and they use water. I said, what would happen if that went to $250, $300, $450? He said, I'd have to sell my horses. Well, that's one of the things that people really love out here is the rural lifestyle, being able to have horses. So not everybody has them, but the idea is we want the government actions to reflect the will of the people, not some personal agenda of the mayor and his two councilors, right?
And nothing that I've witnessed since I've lived in Edgewood, been over 6 years now, inspires confidence in me that our town should run the water utility for 3,000 people. Kind of scares me. That's why I got involved. I don't know EPCOR personally. They're my water company, but the thought of that terrified me, and that's what prompted me to get involved a couple of years ago.
Well, the fact that they were putting contaminated water on our roads, that this is something I don't think that we've mentioned before, but they were putting water on the roads that was 1,100 times over the legal limit for fecal matter, fecal coliforms. But also, there's been all this stuff in the news lately about how the government has found that an effective way to find out if COVID-19 is in a place is to test the sewer water.
Oh my
So
word.
the contaminated water that wasn't disinfected enough to kill the fecal bacteria undoubtedly would have had COVID in it if it was in our town and we're putting it on the roads. So no, I don't want them anywhere near my drinking water. So anyway, we have a limited amount of time, but I just wanted to tell the people that, you know, we understand that they're marching forward on EPCOR, they're marching forward on and still promoting the idea of residential sewer, which no one seems to want. It's very costly and expensive, but we have these new tools. We are monitoring, and we want you to stay informed, stay alert, and what they do will depend on what we do will now depend on what they do in terms of these crazy agendas that they might be still planning. So we're hoping for a good transition to an open form of government with commission manager. However, so far the past behavior has not indicated that we're going to get it without further action on our part. So once again, this is Jerry Powers and Karen Kiser for CORE, Citizens for an Open and Responsible Edgewood. Thanks for listening.